Today is Wednesday, so I don't have my usual topics of the box office weekend or what's coming out over the weekend to talk about. So I did realize earlier today I forgot to talk about Loki. What did I think about Loki in general? I'm gonna have to go with what I said, I think, in an earlier show. I think it's not a show I would recommend, honestly. If you're not a diehard Marvel fan, and if you're, I wouldn't even say necessarily diehard. If you don't watch every Marvel show, I don't know if this show is for you. Like, sure, it kind of is setting stuff up in the final episode for certain things like Spider-Man 3 probably, and certainly Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness. I don't know if it's gonna be really required to have seen this. I feel like, yeah, it'll explain some things, and you'll have a better idea of certain things going into the Doctor Strange movie, but I feel like for a lot of the general audience, they could just skip this series and not miss out on anything. Now, if they're a huge fan of Loki, even then, I don't know if I'd recommend this. Like, I guess if you want to, I wouldn't advise against watching this show, certainly, but it's just, I come back to that, like, first two episodes, like, certainly the first episode, but, like, the kind of interaction between Loki and Mobius in the first two episodes compared to what we got in the rest of the series, I mean, it was so much better. And so I think the biggest thing for your enjoyment of this series, similar to WandaVision, you need to buy into the relationship between Loki and Sylvie, or at least be interested in that interaction. If it doesn't really pay off for you, like I felt it didn't really pay off for me, then you're going to feel like this show is lacking a lot. Just like with WandaVision, you have to really be invested in that relationship between Wanda and the Vision. If you're not, you're going to have a hard time with it. And so I have to say, overall, I kind of feel like I was let down by the writing of this show. I felt like it could have been so much more, and it felt disappointing in so many different areas, felt more disappointing as the episodes went on. So talking about the final episode, I don't know if I would say it disappointed me more. It certainly was interesting. The fact that we basically got Kang, but not Kang, I did not expect. I thought it was interesting that, for all of WandaVision, people were saying Mephisto, and I kind of thought that was going to be the new thing. It's like, it's going to be Kang, and then not turn out to be Kang at all. But no, we actually basically did get Kang. It was a version of Kang. He didn't call himself Kang. It was He Who Remains, but it's basically Kang. It's the same actor. It's a different version of the character. As explained in the episode, there's, with the multiverse, you have all different versions of the character, and this is a version of the character was the survivor of the multiversal war, and he used time travel and they created the TVA to basically prevent other versions of himself from existing. So then you could have the sacred timeline. And then, spoiler alert, Sylvie messes everything up, and that's probably what's going to lead into the multiverse opening up in the movies. I don't know how they'll show it in the movies or not. They don't even really need to reference this series, which is part of the reason why I say I don't know if I would recommend it to non-diehard fans, because I feel like at the end of the day, they're not going to show Loki, this alt Loki really, in the Doctor Strange movie. I don't think so. Especially since they revealed in the post-credit scene that we are getting a season 2 of Loki. Now, I still have hope for this series. I think a season 2 could improve on certain areas. I certainly would prefer a more episodic show. I know that it feels like the streaming shows are kind of still stuck in this mode of like, we need to make, we want to make a 6-hour event. Like it's a 6-hour movie. Like, no. Make a series. It's a TV show. Make a series. It can be episodic. Make a episodic show with an overall arc of a plot, you know? The problem with like episodic shows back in the day was that they weren't allowed to evolve, and you would have long-running episodic shows and things would never be allowed to change because every show had to be a contained story. But the problem now is sort of the opposite, where everything has to be connected. Where like, can't we just have like some episodes that can sort of stand by their own, and then you have story threads that are interwoven throughout the episodes? It's about balance. Stop making these trying to make a 6-hour show, a 6-hour story, because it doesn't work. It just felt like even this, you know, people complained about shows like Daredevil and Jessica Jones for having 13 episodes and being like too many episodes, and then it was 8 episodes, and it's still too many episodes, and then it's 6 episodes with Loki, and I kind of feel like it's still too many episodes. And the reason it's not the amount of episodes, it's how much story you have. And the fact is, the matter when you kind of plot out a thing and say, well, it's going to be one story. Unless you're telling it in 3 steps and you have like a 3-act structure, it's too many. Because say you're dealing with just 6 episodes, you say it's one story. You're doing one story in 6 acts. You need 6 acts to tell a story. That's not a good idea. Not if you're limiting to yourself that watching it from beginning to end is like watching one big story. You're either going to have episodes that don't feel like a whole episode, it just feels like half an episode, or you're going to have episodes that just feel like filler. So I think that, you know, end of the day, my advice to Marvel is embrace the fact that you're making TV shows and have some of them be episodic. Have some of them, you know, they did a good job with WandaVision. WandaVision, for the most part, did have episodes that were distinct from each other. Now, it was part of the fact of kind of you could call it gimmick of the show, where they went from TV era to TV era. But it really did help with the identity of the show. That it's easy to think back on WandaVision episodes and like think of distinct episodes, because they really were kind of, even if they had a sort of overall arcing story to them, they were still very distinct from each other. Whereas if I think about, say, like even Falcon and the Winter Soldier or this show, like a lot of episodes don't stand out. Like I don't remember as many, even when they did come out week to week, it's still kind of hard to remember. Like it's more from the fact of like, oh, I remember watching this and then wanting to wait till the next episode or things like that. But yeah, as I was saying about, like, they need to make it more episodic. And that's what I really hope for season 2. And then getting back to what I was talking about with Sylvie and Loki, I gotta say, at the end of the day, I was not a huge fan of the character of Sylvie. I think I gave her a lot more of a chance than certain haters on the internet, but I didn't really feel that much for the character. She ultimately came off a little bland, to be honest, and I don't want to blame the actress for that. I wonder if part of it was just from the design of the character, or not the design, but the backstory. Maybe too much was put into the idea of this character having been a runaway from the time she was a young child, and so she's basically we don't know that when we first see her, but we find out that she's basically been on the run her whole life. And so maybe that's part of the reason she's not quite civilized, and she's not, I don't know, she's just not as interesting to watch. And if you did not tell me, if we didn't know that, if the series never said this is a female version of Loki, really, would anybody guessed in between those scenes of Loki and Sylvie that she was the female version of him? No, because she does not act like Loki at all. And that's kind of an issue, and the big selling point of the series is this idea of two Lokis, and like their weird attraction for each other is somehow universe breaking, maybe. And I didn't, at the end of the day, after watching it all, I don't really buy it. She's not a great version of a female Loki. In fact, I think it almost would have been better if they just cut that out, because I feel like if you were rewriting the show with just the scripts as they turned out, I feel like there's a version that would be superior if instead of Sylvie being a female version of Loki, she's just the Enchantress. And she's just some magic wielder that, I mean, I get it, that the hook of the show from the very end of the first episode was like, why does the TVA want Loki? Why is Mobius trying to bring him in? Obviously, it makes sense because we're going after another version of you. However, at the end of the day, I think it'd still be better if Sylvie wasn't a version of Loki, if she was just the Enchantress. And especially when we get the backstory, it's not even like she's the same kind of Loki. I mean, it seems like with the different versions of Loki, they're just so different that are they really even the same? How do you even call them the same character if they have completely different backstories, other than maybe they're from Asgard? And I get it, Loki's a shapeshifter, but Sylvie does not act like Loki at all. And yeah, it just doesn't, I don't know, it's just not interesting. And that's the biggest problem. It's not that like, oh, it doesn't make sense. You can't do that, or it's not the way it should be. No, it's just the fact that it's not interesting. It didn't turn out very interesting to watch. And that's what ultimately you're going for at the end of the day. And even with the other versions of Loki, I mean, I said it with episode 5 that like the whole fight scene with the multiple Lokis just seemed very low budget. Even that moment, it seemed like it's supposed to be a big moment at the end of episode 5 with the classic Loki summoning up like a magic version of Asgard or something. An illusionary Asgard, I don't know. It was not hitting me that much. It was a lot of CGI that seemed pretty pointless. And the fact that we were still going to somehow went back to the days of Fantastic Four, Rise of the Silver Surfer with big CGI space clouds, and seeing Loki and Sylvie hold out their hands, go yeah, not a great way to set your conflict. At least the final episode did have like some more of a confrontation between Loki and Sylvie. It kind of felt like that was okay, but would have been more interesting if we had seen more conflict between them before getting to that point. I don't know if that makes sense. It just felt like this is not enough for like the whole series. We should have seen more leading up to that, at least once or twice where they actually fought. I guess they kind of had a little bit conflict in the beginning of episode 3, a little bit as they were running through the TVA. Yeah, so okay, what else? I did want to talk about, if I cannot remember his name at all. let's talk about He Who Remains. I can't remember the actor's name. So the actor is playing Kang in Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania. They've already announced that, so we already knew that, and so I was surprised. I was very surprised seeing him in the show. I was not expecting it, so I knew right away, because I recognized the actor, that this was a version of Kang. And obviously we get all that information in the episode. I liked his performance. You know, obviously I think we're not going to get the same kind of performance in Ant-Man and the Wasp. You know, we're going to see a different Kang, and, you know, maybe someday we'll see this version of Kang again. I don't know. And yeah, I kind of like the whole idea of his character. It did feel like half the episode was just him talking. And I think this is something that sometimes is unfair for the shows to get criticized for, but it did really pull me out a little bit in this episode. In the finale is that most of it is just talking. And I'm not saying the whole show needs to be action, action, action all the time, but when the action feels pretty subpar, like episode 5, and then we get like a little bit of a fight here, it just felt like, I mean, come on, it's Loki. You know, he's supposed to do magic stuff, and there's, I don't know, I expect a little bit more. And it just, ultimately, at the end of the day, it just felt like the showrunner saying, we didn't have the budget for it. And I get it, it's a TV show, it's not a Loki movie. But come on. I wanted more than what we got. And I was disappointed by it. And yeah, I just wanted more from a Loki show. And I'm not even somebody was like a huge Loki fan and somebody was really looking forward to this show over everything else. I was interested, and I thought the trailer showed more promise than what we got in the show. There were certain things that in the trailer that were very interesting, and then we found out in the show they were just quick little bits that kind of went by. What was the name of the plane hijacker, DB Cooper? That whole small bit you got in the trailer seemed so promising and so interesting, and it was just a brief flashback in the show. Totally wasted. There was also something else. Oh, Loki standing like this in the Vote Loki t-shirt with the people around him saying, honestly, what did you expect? So interesting in the trailer. And it's just totally wasted when you realize, oh, it's just an alternate version of Loki, and then he says that, and then because they do the double, triple betrayal, and then they fight. It was a little goofy, honestly, to that point, and it just, it seemed like it could have been such a more of an interesting thing. Like, that whole DB Cooper could have been a major side plot to an episode, and yet it was not. It was just a throwaway story. And then we get things like, oh, we got a major MCU cameo. It's Sylph again, or Lady Civ. That's her name, right? Yeah, we got her again. Remember how she was on Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D.? She was one of the few people from the movies who appeared on Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. Well, we got her back for an episode of Loki. Yay. Now, nothing against the character of Lady Sif, but come on. That was hardly that interesting of a scene to begin with. It was just like the one thing that the TVA picks to torment Loki with over and over again is the time he pulled a prank on Lady Sif and she got mad at him. It just like, that's like the least interesting thing you could come up with. And it feels very limited by budget. Like, you know, we can't afford or probably can't convince Anthony Hopkins to come and do this TV series for an episode, and we can't get Chris Hemsworth. He's too big of a name, costs too much money. But Lady Sif, yeah, we got her. Honestly, I'm not trying to be too harsh on the creators of the show, because if I were in the same situation, I don't know what I would have done, because I'm going to assume you probably would have asked for Anthony Hopkins or Thor, and then been told, no, you're not going to get them for this. And then well, who else can we have in this scene of what would influence Loki? I mean, honestly, I can't remember her name. The Thor's mother, their mother, would have been a better choice, I think. You'd have to write the scene differently, of course, but you could have had something much more emotional than what we got with just Lady Sif beating Loki over and over again. And actually, one second, I feel like I'm getting that name totally wrong, so let me look up Lady Sif. Okay, I've been saying Lady Sif. I meant Lady Sif. Close. I was just mispronouncing it. Okay. And then what else? Kid Loki, just kind of, we don't know what happens to him. I honestly don't really care that much, other than maybe he'll show up in Younger Avengers, I guess. Why would they go through the trouble of having him in classic Loki say, oh, we're gonna stay here, we're not gonna leave with you, and then classic Loki sacrifices himself. Unless I missed it in the episode, I don't think we see what happens to Kid Loki. He just sort of isn't there. So I feel like that's them planting seeds for a future Marvel project. And some of the other things we don't get a lot of resolutions to. Speaking of the ending, Loki's in a new timeline, or who knows what's going on at this point. Honestly, it almost feels like a reset button, so that you can start off season 2 with Loki fresh at the TVA again. It can work. I think there's still. Whoa. I was just. Okay, I didn't want to see that. It can work, but I want them to make improvements to the show. There's just a lot that I feel like needs to be worked on. The episodic thing, it can be more episodic. Don't be so afraid of making multiple stories, Marvel. Do not lock a 6-episode show into telling just one story over multiple episodes, because unless you do something like WandaVision, where you have a very specific reason for having each episode be part of a larger story, I feel like you need to do more thought into what makes each episode distinct, or just don't make them episodes. It's just a longer miniseries. I mean, honestly, looking back on Loki, it could have been 3 episodes. First 2 episodes, 1 episode. Loki at the TVA. The next 2, Loki and Loki and Sylvie take on, get stranded and then take on the TVA. And then 3rd episode, Loki's, at the end of this combined 2nd episode, Loki gets disintegrated, and then we've, 3rd episode, obviously Loki's alive, and then they're in the void, and then you have the ending. Actually, I think it would have been better as 3 episodes, the way they did it. A 3-act structure. If you're going to tell one big story, you're basically telling it as a 3-act structure. So stop making it 6 episodes, because you're not telling a story in 6-part structure. Thank you so much for watching. If you're watching in the future, thank you as well. If you haven't already followed the channel, go ahead, click that follow button. Maybe it helps, maybe it doesn't. I honestly don't know. You can also follow me on Twitter at Skywatcher, and also see me over on YouTube at Jonny Skywatcher. I believe there's links somewhere on the channel about page if you look for it. And I do this webcast every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, rain or shine. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you on Friday.